This has been the year of Zoom, and that has meant a lot of changes for PA school interviews. Many of these interviews this year were on Zoom or virtual somehow, which is way different than in the past. Will it stick? Nobody knows, but you should be prepared. So here are some tips to make sure that you are ready for your virtual interview. These tips will also apply to real life interviews too. So stick around if you have an in-person interview coming up soon. My biggest takeaway from this video that I want you to get is that you should treat a Zoom interview like an in-person interview. From the way you dress to the way you present yourself, think of it like the real thing. It will feel awkward. And especially if you have never really done video at all, you're gonna feel weird. The good news is you can practice. Take some time ahead of time to set up a practice session with a friend or family member so that you know that your technology works, your setting looks okay, your sound works, and you won't have any of those stressful snafus the day of your real interview. So what should you do if there is a technical difficulty? Know that your interviewer is going to understand, and you will not be the first student to have whatever issue it is. Try to fix it as quickly as you can. Try to keep your cool. A short apology is fine. You don't need to apologize profusely. Just try to get back on track. On the flip side of that, if your interviewer has a technical difficulty, have some grace with them and try to make it work, and know that they are struggling through this as well. Bring the same professionalism to your virtual interview that you would have at an in-person session. Wear a suit, look nice, good makeup, or a nicely shaven face. Make sure if you're wearing glasses, you try to get rid of the glare. That's kind of hard. That'll be more to do with your lighting. Natural light is always best. I personally, in all settings and in interview settings, am a hair plait person. I always tuck it behind my ears or mess with it. So for me in an interview, it was very important that I pulled my hair out of my face to make sure I didn't touch it. By practicing ahead of time, by videoing yourself or doing a mock interview, that will help you to identify your funny habits that you may need to break before interview day. Another simple tip, smile. Come across as confident, passionate, happy to be there, even if you don't feel like any of those things. If you can fake it for the however long, 20, 30 minutes of your interview, even if you're sitting there shaking, they will feel like you are ready for PA school. And that's the goal. You want to convince them that you are the best person for a spot in their program. Keep in mind that they would not have invited you for an interview if they weren't interested in you and didn't think you had what it takes to do well. So let that be a boost to your confidence and go into your interview ready to shine, ready to brag on yourself and share your strengths to secure your spot in a PA program. For another tip, try to make sure that there are no distractions. That means turning your phone on silent, shutting the door, telling your friends or family or pets that you're going to be busy for a period of time and asking them to respect that. Make sure your email notifications are off, that nothing is going to go off or give you a notification. Apple Watch, take it off, get rid of it, because you don't want anything that will distract you from your interview. One question I've had about virtual interviews is whether you can take notes during the interview. A good rule of thumb is if it's something that you couldn't do during an in-person interview, you probably shouldn't do it during a virtual interview either. That also goes for having answers in front of you or talking points or notes. Just don't do it. That's gonna come off as really weird. We've had a few people try that during mock interviews, and we can always tell. Even though it's not in person, if you're glancing to the side, you're gonna get distracted, it's gonna throw you off, and it just looks kind of strange. So during an in-person interview, you wouldn't be taking notes. You wouldn't be jotting down questions or things you wanted to talk about. So during a virtual interview, you can't do those things either. If it's an information session or a Q&A session, that's completely different. You totally can take notes during that. But if it's your one-on-one or two-on-one or group interview, please don't. You don't want the school to also think that you're possibly sharing their questions, which isn't a good look. If you've watched our video, the Yale director, Jim Van Rees, he talks about their virtual interview experiences, and I promise you they have seen it all. Since Yale's online program has started, they've been doing virtual interviews because that only makes sense. Go back and watch that video, and he has lots of great tips for shining during your PA school interviews. Let's talk about body language. I want you to make sure and start practicing sitting up straight. Put your shoulders back. If you're slumped over and you look bored, that's not going to make a good impression. You want to come across as engaged. That's probably going to mean sitting on the front of your chair, not slouching back, and really trying to be engaged with your interviewers. Should you look at the screen or the camera? That's debatable. It's our human nature to look at the screen. If you look at the camera, it can definitely help it seem like you're making eye contact, but I've also heard from interviewers that it looks a little creepy. So practice that when you're testing your technology and just do what comes natural to you in that sense so that it's not something else that you're having to think about. If you are doing a virtual interview, what should you have in the background? Try to keep it neutral, but you can have some objects of interest. Just know that if you have a picture or a book that your interviewer may ask you about those things. So be ready for that. And it should go without saying, but take out anything unprofessional. If you maybe have a collection of a certain type of bottle from your college years, you probably don't want to display that during your virtual interview. And you do want to be a little bit aware of what's around you in the space as well as the lighting. And if you need help preparing, we're happy to help. Head to thepaplatform.com and we can get you set up with a mock interview with a practicing PA to make sure that you are ready on interview day. Good luck!